Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my weekly Node-RED code development live stream. An hour or so of doing some Node-RED development work, chatting around Node-RED, talking about stuff you guys want to chat about, whatever really. So welcome if this is your first time watching the stream or if you're on YouTube. Do say hi in the chat or leave a comment. It's always good to know you're there. Softy2k, Grant Spy, lovely to see you all. So what are we up to? Well, what are we up to? The 1.3 release, the beta's been out for a little while. It's ticking along nicely. It's been relatively quiet in terms of any specific issues with the beta, which always makes me slightly nervous. I'd rather people were raising issues on the beta, just so we would have a better feel for how much testing it's getting. So I think I've said in the past couple of weeks, we want to make sure any silly mistakes get swept up before we do the final release, but equally though, we're not going to leave it indefinitely. So my goal is to get the 1.3 release done end of this week, maybe middle of next week, before the holiday weekend here in the UK in 2 weeks' time. So from my perspective, the main work to be done is documentation and the usual release materials like the release blog post and video. And those things do take, particularly the video, they can take 2 or 3 days, a couple days to do, although hopefully hopefully I should be able to knock that out fairly quickly. That said, there are a couple of issues on the books have come in over the last couple of days, which I thought I might spend a bit of time tonight looking at. I think one should be a pretty trivial fix, but we just need to look at, and the other, there's a bit of discussion. We'll perhaps step through the issue a little with the switch node and get a recreation going, and then look at how we want to fix it. And of course, if there's anything else you guys want to talk about, I'm more than happy to talk about stuff. Any questions you guys have, please do ask away. And we'll see how we get on. Now, I guess I can't ignore the fact, if you follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn, you would have seen my news that I'm leaving IBM. So I'm actually currently on holiday for the next couple of weeks, using up the last of my holiday. So I technically am still an IBMer, but I have cleared out my office, and I have set my out of office on my work email for the final time. And it's really quite exciting time. Having been at IBM for 19 years, I've got this new opportunity ahead of me, which I'm not going to say too much about tonight or this week. I'm going to save that for nearer the time, but rest assured it is very Node-RED focused, and it's going to actually, all being well, enable us to do much more in the Node-RED community and in the project than we've been able to do to date. So stay tuned. It should be really cool. I hope it's really cool. I've left my 19 years at IBM to go do it, so it will be really cool. But let's worry more about tonight. So let me There we go. So what are we going to look at tonight? Well, there are 2 issues that are unresolved. This top one should actually be pretty trivial and almost not worth discussing. But there's an issue's come in Given a clean git clone of our repo, npm install, for this user it is failing because somewhere in our dependency tree it's trying to use Python 2, and well, Python 2 is dead. Long live Python 3. So it's a not unreasonable issue of complaint to say, well, we shouldn't really depend on Python 2. And they've done the legwork, and they have identified it's the node SAS module that we're pinned back on 4.14. But if they upgraded it to 5, then the error went away. So clearly node SAS version 5 doesn't have this dependency on Python 2. So yeah, now it's a major version change. It is a dev dependency. So this is a dependency we use at build time. End users of Node-RED don't... Well, before I talk all the way around this, let's actually go look at this stuff. So where are we? So we're going to have a look at our top level package.json of the Node-RED project. And if we go down, so down into our dev dependencies, then somewhere in here is node SAS, sure enough, 4.14.1. So yeah, it's a top level dependency. So this should be a simple switch out that for 5.0.0. But it is a major version change, so we can't just throw in the new version number, cross our fingers and hope. So let's go have a look at node SAS to see what it says about version 5.0. Now, let me just... Okay, so here we are. Here are the release notes for 5.0. And straight away, if we just scan down the breaking changes, you can see. So only support LTS and current node versions, and this remove deprecated process.sas API. Okay, now hopefully this deprecated process.sas API won't be an issue. What is potentially more of an issue is the only supporting LTS and current node versions. Because if we look down here, sure enough, you can see that node 8 is no longer in that list. Now, Node-RED 1.x still supports node 8. We're not dropping it until our Node-RED 2.0 release in just over a month's time, really not long. But yeah, we do technically still support node 8. However, frankly, at this point in time, it does seem I'm kind of in two minds on this. Given this is a build dependency, not a runtime dependency, it does feel like, actually, is it going to be too much trouble to upgrade to Node SAS 5.0, and what are the chances that there is someone who wants to build Node-RED from source on Node 8, given Node 8 is just so far out of support these days. So we wouldn't do it if it was a runtime dependency, but because it's a build time, and the build we can do, the build I do at whatever version of Node I happen to be running. Nothing in the build output is node dependent. So I think, well, on the face of it, it's worth trying. So we are going to try it and see how we get on. So first up, let's just double check what their latest version is. 5.0.0. Okay. So let's swap in 5.0.0. And then run npm upgrade. That's not done anything. Let me just check what version of Node have I got in this shell. So I'm running Node 10 here, which is fine. Let's run an npm install. Wait for that to run through. Now, our dev dependencies do have some fairly old modules in there that we really do need to tidy up. But again, we're going to worry about that in the 2.0 time frame. But yeah, you can see Node SAS 5.500. If we just check it, npm ls of Node SAS. Yeah, we've got 5.0. Good stuff. So now the place where we use Node SAS is in there somewhere, isn't it? As in, I'd say in there somewhere. Has it already run? Oh no, there, running SAS build. Done. Cool. Well, that's a good sign. It tells us the other breaking change in Node SAS 5.0 isn't one that we care about. It hasn't balked at that. Out of interest, if we go back to nvm use 8 and we do an npm rebuild of Node SAS, let's have a look to see what happens. Okay. So they don't just try and find the relevant bits. So it tries to download a pre-built binary and one doesn't exist for version 5 for Node 8. Well, they say they don't support it. So it is now running a build. And if we get lucky, despite some warnings, it may yet build cleanly, which at least means there is a way forward for users of if there genuinely are no users on Node 8 trying to build the core, which, like I said, is probably vanishing small. And like I said, at this point in time, if they haven't upgraded by now, then they've got bigger problems. Trouble is, I've no idea how long Node SAS takes to compile. I imagine it takes a while. If they provide pre-built binaries for it, then yeah, this could take a little bit. So it hasn't fallen over instantly. So yeah, we'll see. Oh, hey, Wiz Radical, Chambiente. Great to see you guys here. Yeah, how long do we watch this paint dry for a compile? Maybe I'll just leave that running in the background. Trouble is, that's kind of getting in the way of doing all the other stuff I wanted to play with. What do we do? If only I knew how long this was likely to take. Where are we up to? Node raw. So it's downloaded all these files, extracted all these files from a tarball. There all includes yeah, it's getting there. I say that with absolutely no certainty. Okay, I'm just kind of hoping it's either going to crap out suddenly or it's just going to say, hurrah, we've finished. Right, just leave that ticking in the background. Let me come back to it, just leave that running where I can keep an eye on it. All right, so that looks like it should be a simple one to upgrade, keep them happy, because whilst we keep Node 8 around for the time being, we don't want to get in the way of progress of people wanting to run on the latest. And yeah, in some ways we could do more damage by holding people back who want to do stuff. So Cool, so that should be a relatively straightforward fix then. So if that compiles cleanly, well, in fact, even if it doesn't, oh, it's finished. There, you see, you start looking elsewhere and then it finishes. Okay, so then let's run grunt build again and see what it makes of the SAS stage. Hey Alex Hernandez, good to see you. Yeah, it's been a little while. Node SAS build, well, the task has run. So yeah, I think I'm kind of happy with that. Let's just get back to a sensible version of Node. Rerun Npm Install just to get off all the 8 stuff. All good. Actually, Npm rebuild Node SAS, because I didn't see it. There. We're all good. So let's just, well, we're not going to commit that change. Let me just run verify. Yeah, we're good there. So let's commit that change and move on. Update node SAS to 5.x. Fixes issue number 2907. Good. Right, that's one issue done. There we are, one issue done, and we're only 18 minutes past the hour. Let's look at the other issue then. Okay, so this is a bug with the switch node. Let's see, and it's one that DCJ has spent a bit of time on, so hope he doesn't mind too much if I have a jump on it, because I've not looked at it much. Cool, and there are some steps to recreate. So let's get Node-RED running, and then we can have a go at recreating. And then once we've got something to recreate, we'll have something to help us check if whatever fix we do is fixed. But let's just talk it through. So lost my window. Here we are. Okay, so Node-RED is starting up. Blah, 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 blah. Good. Okay, my very messy workspace. Right, create a flow with switch node receiving property string to match as message.string and regex. In fact, I think there is a, here's a test flow. Right, yeah, so I'm not going to rebuild it from scratch, but let's just talk it through what's going on here. So switch node blocking exception on bad regex pattern and variable property. So okay, I think I remember this because I did have a brief look at it. Oh, 20 nodes, what does it need? Oh, okay. All right, let's just hit deploy on this. So what have we got? So here we've got a switch node that's, oh, why is it using? Okay, we're going to ignore the JSON edge case for the moment. Down here, we are going to look at, so we've got an inject node that's going to inject string and regex, both with the value foo. Here we inject foo and a regex of bar. And here we've got foo bar and then an invalid a string that is an invalid regex. Okay, and the switch node is going to look at string, message.string, and it does a matches regex and compares it with the regex provided in message.regex. Okay, so if it matches, it goes on the top output. If it doesn't match, it should go on the bottom output. Okay, so if we do the good regex and it matches, you can see it's coming to this debug node, which looks like so it's outputting the word match or no match, just makes it easy. So yeah, good regex and a match, we get a match output, nice. Good regex, but it doesn't match, we get no match, great. Now, if we inject the bad regex, we get an error, and it is a message.error. Okay, invalid regular expression. Now, if we re-inject the good regex, nothing appears, and if we re-inject this other one, basically these cases have now stopped passing anything through. So by passing in this bad regular expression into the node, it's effectively broken the node for any subsequent messages, which is not ideal. Something I want to do then is also just check so it's logged an error we've shown up here, but is it a catchable error? That's the other thing I want to check. So let's just check the node's working again. It's working again because we've done a deploy, so the node's been restarted. Let's inject the bad regex, and there. Okay, that's good. You can see there's no error message this time. Now we've got a message from this debug node, so it is a catchable error. In fact, there's the full stack trace for it, which is very generous of us to provide. In fact, yeah, so you can see line 29 of the switch code. How very convenient. So let's go have a look at line 29. And that was 10 switch.js. Line 29. Okay, so this is how the switch node works. For all the different operations, we have these operator functions that take a number of arguments, and depending what rule you've selected, it triggers one of these functions with each message. So here you can see the regex. A is the string is the property that we are looking at the value of. Yeah, so A is whatever this thing in this top box evaluates to. And what we do is we force it to a string, because we're doing regular expressions, so it has to be a string. And then we use the does it match, and looks at B and D. I don't know what property C represents in all of this, but anyway. But in this instance, B will be whatever the value is message.regex provides, and D is whether this tick box ignore case. And you can see if D is true, we add the I flag to the regular expression. Otherwise, we don't, because I is the flag to ignore case in a regular expression. Cool. So the problem we're getting, if we just make this a bit wider so we can see a bit more of it, so that's been called from line 192. So let's jump down to 192. Yeah, so here you can see that's where operators was that object of all the different operator functions at the top. We look at, based on what the rule type is, the T, we look up that function and then we evaluate it, we call it, passing in all those different arguments, possible arguments for it. Then it, if it returns true, then all well and good. Else it, if it's true, it matches, so it needs to be sent on, and this is the work it does in that case. Otherwise, that's the work it does in that case. And I'm not going to get into all the internal logic of the switch node, but the key thing to note is there's no try catch here. So there's nothing going on here that will propagate up any sort of error, or the error is just being allowed to propagate all the way up, and somehow it's killing the node. All right, so the simple answer suggests to be we just need a try catch in the right place, keep this error isolated to the one message. So I just want to, so Dave has said, basically summary of what I've just said, the simple fix is to add a try catch around the regex invocation, just return false. If you want to create an error, then we need to make this into a special case. I might do that simple fix 1.3, okay. Right, the desired behavior is a catchable and recoverable exception is thrown anytime the regex evaluates to invalid. Yep. A match should not be given in the case of an invalid regex. Yep. This desired behavior is exactly what happens in the following switch node. So the question becomes, how are they both? Okay, I'm just trying to. All right, yeah. So I think Dave is a step ahead of where we are at the moment. The point being, yes, sure, the quick fix is to have a try catch around here. What we don't have, what I think Dave is saying we don't have is a way to do the node.error at this point. But it says that we need some extra plumbing. Now, I'm not sure that's necessarily the case, because we can, where we're at, we're in, this is the done function we need to call at some point, and if we hit an error, we can just call done with that error, and that is the proper way to report an error at this point in time. So I don't immediately see don't immediately see a problem. Now Dave is might be watching, and he might ping me on Slack in a minute to tell me the error of what I'm writing, or what have I missed in this analysis, or there may be some subtlety to it that I've overlooked, but for now we're just going to forge ahead. So we stick a try catch, and we may as well stick that all around, and this is probably quite healthy to do anyway, because I've no doubt there might be other edge cases we just happened to not stumble over, if for certain more perverse inputs to some of these functions, although they are all fairly type safe. I suspect the regex one is the only one, because it constructs a new regular expression based on the user input. I suspect at a glance that's the only one that could actually go boom like we're doing. So but given we've shown that if an exception is thrown here, it kills the node, it's probably a good idea to have some error handling here, just in case. So we don't need to make this specific to the regex case, even if that's probably the only scenario that's going to trigger it. So out of interest, let's just call done with that error. Okay, it's funny. I get into the habit of just reloading the editor, even though the fix we've just done is in the runtime, so I didn't need to reload the editor. So let's give this a go. We inject good, that's fine. We inject good, which doesn't match, that's good. Now we inject the bad one. Okay, so here we've now had the error, but note the error has been reported by the node, the error has been reported by the node. It hasn't been caught this time. So the fix we've done is to report the error, but it's not being reported in a catchable way. But let's move on. What if we try injecting another good message? And you can see that's now working again. So at least that simple try catch now stops the node from getting broken. So now the question is, okay, have I now found the point Dave was making about some extra plumbing needed? The simple passing up an error is clearly not quite enough here. So let's trace up to find out what's going on. So we have apply rule, and it's the final argument passed to apply rule. Let's go find where we actually invoke that. Here we are. So here we have apply rule and its last argument. This is the callback with with an error argument. So we are in the situation where we are here exists. So we're doing this bit, and then we're basically propagating the error up to the next done callback. So let's go look at where apply rules gets invoked, and there's two of them. This is the main one. Okay, and here you can see we do a node.warn. So here is that done callback being passed in, and again is set. Now here we're doing a node.warn. Okay. Now arguably that ought to be a node.error, because we've hit a problem whilst trying to apply the rules. But changing from a warning to an error is one of those things, because of the catch node. Yeah, that could get a little hairy if we suddenly start, for conditions that were warnings in 1.2 suddenly become errors in 1.3. That's a bit of a change of behavior that is not entirely ideal. Maybe we should add that to the 2.0 list, but perhaps it would be useful just to think about what are the sorts of errors that what are the existing scenarios we have where this error will get passed up and we will just do a warn rather than an error, a no.error. Because if we're just doing a no.warn, then it's impossible for the user's flow to recover. Now I suspect the problem is I suspect the problem is there are certain scenarios where these guys, you could do things that are invalid. Okay, let me show you what I mean. So let's say we stick in an invalid. Yeah, that is not valid JSON-ARTA, and we deploy that, and you can see here. Okay, we've had an error. Sorry, I say see here, and I don't do a good job of highlighting it. So you can see of the various log messages we get whenever I hit deploy, and it's a huge workspace with lots of testing going on. So, but this is the germane one. Invalid JSON-ARTA expression, syntax error. Okay, so it's caught it as soon as we've hit deploy. Let's deploy again. Now, what happens if we actually invoke it? Well, nothing gets through, so we don't get a warning. So that was something that was being caught at deploy time. I want to try and nail down any scenario that can happen at runtime. So this is where we've got to sort of work back up. So here's apply rule and the done. So we could be calling done with an error if get v1 returns, well, calls back with an error, or if get v2 calls back with an error. So get v1 and get v2 are the function that actually gets the values, gets whatever value this property represents. So let's look at get v1 first. Get v1. Where do we call done? So here you can see. So if it's a JSON expression, we will call done with an error if it turns out to be an invalid JSON expression. I suspect that code is now redundant actually, because I think we catch that when we've initialized the node, that we've validated the various expressions. So that could be a bit of a red herring, that path. Otherwise, nowhere else do we call done with an error. Yeah, you can see we pass in undefined as the first argument in all cases other than the evaluate JSON expression. So let's look at get v2. Where do we call done? So again, you can see there is the case of if the JSON is invalid, and I'm pretty certain, I've got a hypothesis that line of code will never get evaluated, because I think we spot the invalid JSON much earlier. So let's test that theory. So let's look where else do we evaluate. Do we want? No, we don't want to evaluate it. It's not an evaluation. There must be somewhere where we set up the node initially. Yeah, okay, so here we are in the node zone constructor. Here we iterate through all the rules, and a whole bunch of validation is going on, including if the rule type is JSON, we do a prepare JSON, and if that fails, then we do a this.error, which is good, and that is what we saw, wasn't it? If I hit deploy. Yeah, we get an error. Yes, it's an uncatchable error. It's just because we just log with the message, but that's fine because it's at startup. There is no message to pass to a catch node. And then likewise, so v1 and v2, because for some properties like is between, there you've got v1 and there you've got v2. So there might be two properties to extract. But the point being, we've validated it as part of constructing the node, and we mark the node as valid as set to false. And if it's not valid, then we don't set up any message handling. So the node is effectively dead in the water. It's not going to pass anything through it. But that's good. And I say that's good because that means as we walk through the code, apply rule with this done argument, it is, now I'm not going to remove it just in case, but this only happens if v1 is an invalid JSON expression, but that will have already been logged and the node marked invalid as part of the constructor. And I'm going to do the same for v2. And then, so finally we come down to this catch, which says, something has gone wrong, like an invalid regular expression. We pass through the error. Let's say no, an error occurred evaluating the rule, for example, an invalid regex value. Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? Cool. So let's just, what now? So this is apply rule. I think I'm satisfied I've proven apply rule will only fail with an error with a regex, and it will be, well, it will only, in the existing code before I made any changes, it would never call the callback with an error as the first argument. So this would never happen. And why is that important? I think the reason I'm sort of labouring this point is, let's go back to where apply rules gets called. Let me just, yeah. So this is where apply rules gets called. If the only scenario, well, in the existing code, this error property will never be set because there were no error conditions that would lead to it being set, which means this node.warn would never be called. So now we have an error scenario where we want it to be, get logged and we want it to do the right thing. I think it is okay for us to change that to a node.error. We're not going to be changing any existing behavior. This was redundant, unused code. It is now going to be used, so we can change it to do what we want it to do. And we'll get its node.error with the error object and the message, the original message. Yeah. So let's have a look. So let's trigger the good one, the bad one, and then the bad regex. And there you can see it has been caught by our catch-all node, which is great. Yep. And then the other ones still work. Cool. So that's this middle test case. Let's just have a quick look at what does this middle one do. So this is message.string and message.regex. This is message.payload and message.regex. Oops, let's not change its behavior. So I think, other than the different property name, this is exactly the same functionality. And okay, that works. And then let's just go back up to this JSONata one. So that should match, that should match, that should fail. And yeah, it sort of fails in an appropriate way. And let's just clear the debug sidebar and then just check messages can still flow. Yeah, and that still flows through. So I think we've done it. We will, well, I think we've done it. There is one edge case which is to do with group messages. But there's part of me wonders, is this just way too much of an edge case to concern ourselves with too much at this point? So the switch node, let's talk about what I'm thinking of here. Let's junk that node because it's bad. So the switch node can be used to route messages, and it can be used to filter messages. You could say, rather than here saying just passing to a debug, you could, if it's not a match, just do nothing with that message, just drop it. So only let things that match flow through. Very typical use case for the switch node, and that's good. It gets a little trickier when you have a message sequence. So a message sequence is where you have, say, the split and join nodes, and you pass in a blob of some sort into the split node. The split node turns that into a sequence of messages, and then the join, so one message turned into many, into a sequence, they can all get passed to the join node, and the join node will join them back together. And the way it does that is each of the messages in that sequence gets a little bit of metadata attached to it, so that when the join node receives it, that metadata gives it all the clues about the different messages and how many messages there are in this group, in this sequence, and so it knows how many messages to wait for to recombine them. But then if you want to put a switch node in the middle that does this sort of filtering behavior, obviously you're going to change the number of messages. So what we have in the switch node is this option down the bottom called recreate message sequences. And what that will do is, if it realizes it's dropping messages that are part of a sequence, it actually holds on to all the messages in the sequence until it has the full sequence, so that it can then work out, right, I need to pass, these are the messages I am passing on, so it can recreate the metadata for the new sequence with the messages that have been dropped, removed from the sequence. So the edge case I'm now wondering is, if you have a sequence coming in and one of those messages for some reason triggers this new error and gets dropped, but all the other messages carry on through, are we left with an invalid sequence? Does that make sense? Do we need to do some more work to repair that sequence? Because you can't, once you're broken, you're kind of broken. Now, there is part of me that wonders that, are we into the 1% of functionality that's going to take a whole bunch of work to even contemplate fixing, if it's such an edge case that, the fact you're generating a sequence, that sequence is somehow including dynamically set regular expressions in the switch node, and more so you have an invalid regex in amongst them. It's really quite a subtle edge case, it feels, but let's have a little play to see, can we get to a point to provoke that sort of, because maybe it works, so we don't lose sleep. So I'm just going to set up this flow. Okay. Split node by default, if you pass it a string, will split each line into its own message. So A, B, C, D, E, F, and then let's what's the bad regex we're doing? Okay. Okay, so there we're going to have one bit of text with these 4 rows in. One of them has got this bad regex in. We're not worried about not worrying about that for the moment. So if I hit deploy, we can change this to modified flows just to reduce the noise each time I hit deploy. When I hit inject, what do we get? Well, you can see this debug node attached to the split node has received 4 individual messages, 1 for each line, and then the join node has successfully joined them all back together into 1 message. Good, and that's working. We'd be in trouble if that bit didn't work. Now, what we're going to do is add in a switch node. Okay, and we're going to do yeah, matches regex, and we're going to say we only want, oh no, not A, B, C, A, D, and G. So this is a little test that is going to look at each of these messages in turn and says, does it start, if you're familiar with regexes, maybe you can see what this does. But does it start with an A, a D, or a G? Okay, so let's confirm deploy. And when I inject that, you can see the 4 messages have all come out of the split node, but you'll see there's nothing has hit this last debug node. And why is that? Well, because this rule has dropped one of our message with the invalid regex. The fact it's an invalid regex is irrelevant at this point. It's more to the point it doesn't start with the letter A, D, or G. But now if I tick recreate message sequences and deploy, now when I run it, so now you can see we have received the message at the end, and that sequence of 4 messages has been reduced to a sequence of 3, and the join node has successfully joined it back together. So that's everything there is working as intended, but we've not yet touched the bug, if you like. So what we're going to change this to now is we're going to use message.payload as the regular expression. I'm going to leave recreate message sequences ticked, and we're going to look at what do we want this to do? So we are going to use the string A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, because these 3 regular expressions we're going to, these 3 values we're going to use as regular expressions. Each of those will match this string because they all appear in that string, but this one won't because it's invalid, it's junk. Okay, so let's clear out and let's run that. So we've had the 4 messages, and here you can see the catch node has caught the error, and we've had nothing come out the end. And that is because the switch node the switch node knows it's a sequence of 4 messages, and it's hit an error dealing number 4, which means all of this logic has not gone right. Now, I think what we want to do at this point is probably to say if repair and has parts basically means the current sequence we're dealing with is part of a sequence. Then I need to check this onward object is important, I think. Let me just go. Sorry, I just stop talking for a moment just whilst I think about what this is. Onward, apply rules, onward, in here. Right, here we go. So here you can see if the message matches the operator, then we push the message into our onward array, into the onward array in our current group state. So this is what's keeping track of the messages coming through. Otherwise, if it doesn't match, it pushes in a null, which is to say this message shouldn't get passed on. So I think I've got a sort of feeling down here this is the same kind of logic. We want to say don't pass this message on because it doesn't match. for this output. Is that right? Possibly. Although, yeah. So now down here, where we've reported the error, and then we want to check, do we need to send on the group messages? And onward. No. Sorry, I got that wrong. Apply rules. Sorry, just going quiet for a moment whilst I just wrap my head around. Has more. No, it's the second one. There's more. Stay onward. Okay, no, I think we're good. Well, let's find out. Let's have a sniff. Right. So we inject this. Okay. We get our 4 messages out of the split node we expect. We now get 2 errors. Okay, so the first one, you can see the payload is our invalid regular expression, and the error is syntax invalid, blah, blah, blah. But we've had another error, payload for GHI, and the error says, cannot read property 0 of undefined. Okay, so we have mucked it up. Let's have a look. So that's on line 380. Line 380. So onward. So what's it complaining about? Cannot read property 0 of undefined. So onward at this point is undefined. Okay. Which means something duff has got passed into that. Sorry if this is, I can tell when I start talking in slightly half sentences because I'm, yeah, apply rules, no.sense, onward is, okay, onward is the array of all messages to be sent to all outputs of the node, I think. Because a message might end up getting sent to multiple. Ugh, dear. See, this is when Dave said a bit more plumbing is needed. Yeah, okay, we're deep in that plumbing now. But here we are back at where, so we evaluate the rule. If it returns true, we push it onto our onward array. Done. That's all okay. You know what, I think. Yeah, let me just work back up. So that done rule of apply rules, the plural one, this second one has more is needed because that's telling us there are more messages to sorry, I'm slowly getting there. And this is what I meant about this isn't one of those edge cases that you've got to wonder, do we really need to deal with it quite so much? So, Yeah, if we get an error in the middle of the group, I think we end up killing the whole group. I think I can't immediately see a way of just being able to being allowed the rest of the group to carry on. I just don't quite see how that's going to work. I can imagine if this is... Yeah, I'm losing you guys. Yeah, see, it bails out. We have to bail out early. I think killing the group makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, at this point, I'm feeling, let's kill the group. And if someone hits this edge case and they need it to work, well, we accept pull requests. Or we can revisit it another time. And I'm up on my hour, and I wasn't expecting to take a whole hour on this one anyway. So let's just check it. So we inject it. Yeah, we get the catch. We don't get an onward message because we've killed the group. Yeah, I think that's good enough for now. You're right, Sharon. The data is inconsistent. Yeah, it's deep in the weeds of how do you then meaningfully recover from it, and so on and so forth. So, okay, that's good. Let's check. So the other good sanity check to always do is let's run our unit tests for the nodes. Nodes core common, isn't they common? No, they are function 10 switch. There we are. So all of the existing unit tests pass for that. There is, as ever, the open question of should I spend 5 minutes at the risk of it ending up being another hour of adding a unit test for this. Do we look for invalid? Invalid should handle invalid JSON expression. Yeah. So nowhere do we actually test for invalid. Invalid regex. Okay, so here we, yeah. Just look at where else we look at log events, just because it's always instructive, because, yeah. No, I'm gonna skip that for now. We're good. All right. Let's get this committed and then, oops. So let's just review exactly what changes I made and also make sure I haven't left anything silly in there. So we've got, I added those comments about where done an error is never actually called. We've put a try catch round where we actually evaluate it, and we the diff has got a little confused. Yeah, we percolate up the error. That's goodness. And then we've convinced ourselves properly, I believe, this no.warn was never getting evaluated, so we can change that to be a no.error, which is the right thing for it to be doing. So a catch node, because anything at that point is going to be a dynamically generated error, not a static configuration of the node which got caught when the node was deployed. This is dynamic error. So we should log it as error for a catch node to catch, and we are good. Cool. All right. Handle invalid regex set dynamically in switch node fixes. 2905. And we push that up and we're done for tonight. Cool. Yeah. So 1.3, if you haven't tried it, please do try it. There's the post on the forum how to install it. Npm install Node-RED at next to get the beta of 1.3. Plan to publish it. Hopefully, my best guess is going to be next week. Like I said, I'm on holiday. I'm doing a whole bunch of DIY at home and keeping Node-RED ticking over. But yeah. And I will say, Grant, yes, absolutely, I will continue to support Node-RED. If anything else, I'm even more committed to Node-RED for the next few years than I was before. It's going to be really exciting. The really cool aspect of it, as far as, without getting into all the ins and outs of what it's about, is over the next few months, I'm going to be hiring. I'm going to be recruiting people to join me to work on Node-RED, and actually get paid to do it. So whether that's, predominantly that is in the open source, helping to accelerate some of the stuff in our roadmap, but also helping do just a whole bunch of work in the community, but as well as doing some stuff around the outsides of Node-RED as well. So that's one of the things that's attracted me to this opportunity. So actually being able to invest and build a team around me and around the work we do with Node-RED to build something even bigger and better with it. So very exciting. Watch this space. I'll be sharing more about it in a couple of weeks' time. No worries, Noxie. You're here now. It's going to be super interesting. It's going to be a lot of work, but it's going to be fun work to do. So I will share more details about that in the coming weeks. Otherwise, I think I'll be streaming again next Monday. We'll see how the 1.3 stuff goes. It may well be, frankly, there's kind of not worth jumping into anything new with 1.3 on its way. And certainly in 2 weeks' time, it's a public holiday here in the UK, and I won't stream on that Monday. So there we go. I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you all. Like I say, if you're watching the YouTube stream and you've stuck it out this far, then do leave a comment. Let us know. I feel like there needs some sort of drop your code word. If you've watched the YouTube video this far, leave a comment saying, I'm too tired even to think of anything funny off the cusp. But there we go. One thing I am doing is reorganising my office, so you'll see the Lego change from time to time. In fact, those guys have snuck onto my windowsill from my kids' room. But you can see, if I lean this way, you can see I've got Wally, BB-8, D0, and me. Anyway, I'm wittering now. I'm going to go. Cup of tea time. Thanks, everyone. See you soon. Bye.